Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. I'm reminded that there is an addendum that is solicited for me to share amidst recent uh, soliloquies and self deprecation, truth, balance, generosity, and altruism. So, um, what I share here is the basically like informal, almost scriptural reasoning on the topic of monotheism across the, the different religions of the world, particularly East as well as West. In recent weeks, I have a conversation with kinfolk from the Jehovah's Witnesses, talking about the specific topic about monotheism, what the actual doctrine is within Jehovah's Witnesses, how it distinguishes itself, or how it is distinguished from other strands, other lineages of Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, and additionally, um, and what Jehovah's Witnesses communicate, the brethren on public square communicate to me, is that Jehovah's Witnesses abstain from equating Jesus with God. So there's an absence of the belief in the Trinity within Jehovah's Witnesses. So that's an interesting actual fact, and I probably knew that before, but sometimes we need reminders. So there's benefit for that. Now, so when asking Jehovah's Witnesses, and this is predicated upon a preceding conversation that was actually a beautiful conversation, challenging conversation, where the sister accused me of being polytheist, and I communicated like, yo, I am unaffected by that accusation because ultimately God is the judge. But for your own sake, it's beneficial for you to be knowledgeable about what you're saying, because there's repercussions for those false accusations. So that was the conversation, and it was like it concluded congenial, but still it was like unopened. And after thinking about it further, like, yo, is this a doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses, the perceiving people believing different deities, and somebody who believes the truth in each tradition, or other, multiple traditions, being considered like polytheists? So when talking with Jehovah's Witnesses, to be honest, still the question is somewhat unanswered, but it doesn't seem to be a fast doctrine. What the response is when asking the brethren at public square about that is that, rather than like stating what the beliefs are concerning other religions, the Jehovah's Witnesses simply speak about what Jehovah's Witnesses believe, particularly as distinct from Christianity. And so there's appreciation for that. It doesn't answer the question directly, but in spirit, it answers it for the moment. So, in response, I provide some information about what the theology is within Islam specifically, but then also we got a little bit into India, but it was a lot to handle, even at that moment, particularly on the street, impromptu and additionally. And to be honest, it was a beautiful conversation. The Jehovah's Witnesses are considerably skilled and trained in terms of being diplomatic and congenial. I'm sure kinfolk receive a lot of different challenges, and so are taught how to deal with those things, but always like maintaining a very calm demeanor and additionally. And so even when discussing and having very strong disagreements, there's the way the Jehovah's Witnesses speak, at least in that context, is it's upfront, but at the same time, it's kind of like, it's actually kind of like, to be honest, a little bit of jujitsu, of absorbing. So, anyways, all that being said, it can be difficult. I know it's difficult for Jehovah's Witnesses to receive a description about things that are outside, particularly that are foreign, quote unquote, or whatever. So I was be mindful of that. We spoke specifically about Islam, and so I mentioned how, because the Jehovah's Witnesses actually, I the purpose for them being on the streets is not to like learn or actually have an interfaith conversation. In my understanding, Jehovah's Witnesses are very uninterested in interfaith conversation and in dialogue and stuff like that through the years that I'm involved in that. So I also have different opinions concerning the United Nations. So that's understood. But also it's beneficial to be knowledgeable about what other religions say, to be able to speak about that in terms of relationships. So I asked, basic question is whether Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jehovah's Witnesses, um, is it the doctrine that Jehovah's Witnesses believe in the same God that Muslims believe in? whether Jehovah's Witnesses believe that, or is there a belief of the two different communities believing in a different deity. So again, the question was not answered directly because the brethren that I speak with have less of a knowledge about what Muslims believe. So I'm unable to say definitively what yay or nay, just stating what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. And then that's when it got into the distinction between Jehovah's Witnesses and Christianity and the Trinity. So that was information or a reminder for myself. So with that being acknowledged, there was an understanding there. Then I said, well, I can share with you what it says in Islam. And so they're like, okay, sure. Now that was the first time like I had a green light from Jehovah's Witnesses to speak about something that's not pertaining to Jehovah's Witnesses or outside of the immediate context of the Gospels or the Bible. So at that point, I was like, whoa, okay. So here it is. So then I share about the Quran. I share that within Islam, there's a belief in one God, and it's the same God that is believed within Christianity, and it's the same God that's believed in Judaism, in the tradition of Israel, that affirms the Bible, that affirms the Quran, that affirms the Torah. And then I also mentioned, then the Jehovah's Witness asked something about Jesus, and I mentioned how Jesus is like Jehovah's Witnesses. What do Jehovah's Witnesses think about Jesus? So then I talk about how Jesus is throughout the Quran. Jesus is continually referenced and honored. I talked about how the Quran proclaims the virgin birth, Mary being a virgin and giving birth to Jesus, and the whole Jehovah's Witnesses brethren are kind of have the eyebrows raised and kind of like impressed in learning that, and I'm like, wow, didn't know that. Okay, here we go. Let's go continue on. I mentioned Abyssinia. I mentioned how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sends his followers amidst the persecution in Mecca to Abyssinia, where there's the reputation of there being a Christian king who is righteous, where the Muslim practitioners at the early stages can receive refuge from the persecution. And so again, Jehovah was like, whoa, huh, wow. So like, whoa, okay, here it is. So we talk about that further. Now I already know, like, okay, this is generous, this is a beautiful conversation, but this is a lot. So I'm being mindful of that. But the main point of that is to emphasize that within Islam there is that the belief in one God. And interestingly enough, and I push a little bit here, but interestingly enough, it seems as though that the belief in God that Jehovah's Witnesses have may be further proximate to the belief of God that Muslims have, compared to the belief in God that Jehovah's Witnesses have with other Christians. Interesting that. So then where I pushed it was about unbelieving in Jesus as Savior, and so that's where, because definitively within Islam there's an absence of the intermediary, and additionally, and I'm uncertain how that theology works within Jehovah's Witnesses, but I didn't want to. We were already building on so much positive at that point. Don't let that be for the moment. So so I kind of like regress from that kind of element of the discussion. Plus, I'm on my way to something else. To be honest, TMI, I had to urinate at that point, so that's another story. But anyways, that was the conversation. Then I started to delve into the field of Desi land of India, and talking about Hinduism. And I said, like, even what fewer people seem to be aware of today is that even in India, like people talk about Hinduism being polytheism, and even in talking with Hindus, there's a reference of Hinduism being polytheist. But in actuality, Hinduism is not polytheist. It's actually monotheist. But the thing is that Hinduism doesn't personify God in the same way that the Abrahamic religions do, and because of that, then the perception of God, the nature of God, is different between the religions. And so it's a matter of understanding what we're talking about. Now, I already knew that's way next level kind of conversation. It's not higher than, it's not imperceivable by anybody, but that takes a lot to like just sit down and kind of like invest in that conversation. That's not something that's just like a high buy kind of thing. It's kind of like, yo, we're gonna have to like sit and invest some time into have this conversation so that we are very clear about what we're talking about. But I introduced that understanding, and I said that even if you talk with Hindus today, many Hindus will not say that. And the big thing that I said at that moment is that because the teachings, and I referenced the Rig Veda, and again, my knowledge about the Rig Veda is comparatively modest, but I do have a strong knowledge about the Bhagavad Gita as well as the Upanishads. And I say that the basic teaching within Hinduism is that um, there's only one. Like truth is one. That's the Rig Veda. Truth is one. All the Dharma, all the beliefs and everything, it's one. This, and we can go into the Advaita and Veda, all the different theologies, but it's oneness. And the main difference is that, or one of the main differences is that within Hinduism, it is said that people believe in the different things. People can talk about Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Indra, Rama, Krishna, and additionally, um, and people can bow and pray and make statues and everything else like that. And I don't mean to speak derogatorily, but what's said is that, and when people are doing that, people are concentrating towards a portion, a partiality, a microcosm of the ultimate, of the eternal, of the infinite, of the oneness. Just like it's described and that it's proclaimed within Abrahamic traditions. The difference is that is what's prescribed for the believer, for the practitioner who is aware. So in Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Islam, less so in Christianity. But when there's the observance of idol worshippers or things to that effect, or polytheists, the prescription is annihilation, destroy it, and that's like one of the worst things that can ever be done in life, destruction, annihilate it. However, in India, the prescription is let them alone to their own delusions. Like, um, you know the truth. Focus on the truth, and distance away from the things that are not truth. That's it. It's not necessary to annihilate. It's gonna undo itself, one way or the other. Focus on your path. Focus on your truth. Focus not on your truth. Focus on your understanding of truth. Um, so it's a different prescription about how to react and how to respond to those phenomena, to those tendencies. That's what the difference is. Now, when we have an understanding of that, when we like have a genuine comfort with that, and a genuine recognition of the monotheism that exists within Hinduism, and I don't say that in terms of like, well, as though like Hinduism qualifies as a monotheist, like it's supposed to, like it's part of the club, whatever. This is the nature of it. So it's the same truth, but it's understanding in a different way. Now that's perhaps like the first part of the conversation, and then again, what is considered is particularly understanding the Jehovah's Witnesses is, where does it say? What's the citation? And we can go into passages of the Bhagavad Gita where this is articulated explicitly. We can go to the Rig Veda. Again, my knowledge, I abstain from studying significantly the Rig Veda because it does have reference to a lot of celestials, but that's a whole other thing. And I plan to get that in a minute. But we can go to the Upanishads as well, but particularly the Bhagavad Gita says it plainly and clearly. There's that. So when we talk about scriptural authority, but we also, in having that conversation, have to understand the nature of scriptural authority within Hinduism as well, because it's somewhat different than within Christianity, Judaism, as well as Islam. But that's the first part, to recognize that monotheism within India. The second part is to recognize the polytheism, or the person. It's 5 to the hour. 5 to 1? Yes. Okay. Actually, about 7 minutes. Okay. So, it's actually the practice of I'm trying to think, personifying deity within Abrahamic traditions. So, this seems to be where a lot of the dissonance exists. aside from just the greed, and I mentioned that in the conversation with the Jehovah's Witnesses brethren. But that probably third or fourth on this list. But second is the personification of God. So in Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, people talk about, and it's taught, the writings, the teachings say, the writings, the scriptures talk about the hand of God, the wrath of God, um, in a very personified way, of God being a being. Talks in literally, even within Torah, talking about seeing the back of God, Moshe Rabbeinu in the mountain, in the cliff, um, and then that goes further towards, particularly within Christianity, being children of God, and applying even further, referring to God as Father. So all of those things are very unquestioned, many in the respective traditions. Um, but when looking at it from the Eastern side, from the lens of India and from China as well, it's like, wait a minute, that's like personifying gravity. That's like saying being the son of gravity, being children of gravity, the hand of gravity. Be careful of the wrath of gravity. It's like it doesn't compute, and so it's a lessening of the nature of God, the nature of the ultimate reality. So again, in that response, in Hinduism, it's like, okay, don't annihilate that, don't kill it, don't say, oh, evil. It's just saying, oh, okay, they're personifying this, so that's like making a statue, that's a graven image. So okay, just make a distance. Oh, so you're personifying this. Oh, that's the second thing, because then what happens is the third thing, which is there are angels within India. There are asuras and nagas and ashvins and all the different celestial beings, angels. Just categorically, just call them angels within India, um, within Hinduism, within Buddhism as well, because Buddhism emerges from India. I'm going to abstain from speaking specifically about Jainism or even Sikhi, but just predominantly Hinduism and Buddhism, particularly at the moment. Particularly, that's where my strength is in terms of scriptural knowledge. So there are angels, just like there are angels in Judaism, there are angels in Christianity, there are angels in Islam. That's foundational belief in each of these traditions. Today, amidst the secularization and science of common culture, there's a strong suspicion and disbelief in angels. But traditionally, and to this day, Orthodox practitioners within Judaism, Christianity, Islam, very much believe in angels. At this moment, living, or angels existing at this moment. So, same thing within India. So when in India, people hear about people talking about God as the hand of God. Oh yeah, that's an angel. You're talking about an angel. And so when people ask, oh, how many deities do you have in? Oh yeah, we have thousands, countless of those. But what's they're talking about is angels, not God, not the ultimate reality. Because the Hindu mindset says you don't personify the eternal. You don't personify the ultimate reality. That's just it's illogical. It's just like it's nah. But if you want to personify things, that's the celestial being. Sure, there's lots of those. So that's the third thing, recognizing that the things that people call deities within India, and additionally, are essentially angels, um, because there's no personification. That's not done concerning the ultimate reality. Um, so that's the third thing. And that's on the West. The West is creating those, is personifying and that misinterpretation. So first thing is the monotheism exists within Hinduism, and it doesn't vilify it. Second thing is that the West Abrahamic traditions personify God, and then the third is that there's a miscommunication, or there's something lost in translation. What's the miscommunication? There's something lost in translation, and the things that are referred to as deities are essentially angels. Now we can talk about, again, Vishnu, Krishna, Shiva, Brahma, and additionally, but that's a little bit of a further advanced conversation. And part of that involves looking at the 99 beautiful names of Allah, and understanding Vishnu, Krishna, Brahma, and all other what are referred to as I'm not even. I'm going to keep that to the side for the moment. Um, so we do the third thing, the angels. The fourth thing is that um, there is worshiping of the angels. People do make statues of angels. People do bow down in Hinduism. People do bow down and pay homage to statues. There is idol worship. That's facts. And so it is done within India. However, again, it's not the total. It's not the higher teaching, and it's simply it's I can say tolerated, but and to say accepted is a little bit high. To say tolerated is a little bit too strong, and to say accepted is a little bit too much in terms of it simply exists, and it's simply not vilified, it's very widespread. I don't mean to sound derogatory, but I'm trying to speak matter of factly. So that is something. That is a disagreement. There's a disagreement concerning that. So that there is that, and it's difficult to see that being reconciled. I think that's the fourth thing. So. I'm going to say a fifth thing here, and I think just a minute ago I said there would be something else that would be number four or third, but I have to remember that. So the fifth thing is this, and it's interesting. Note, I'm going to throw it in here. So and this is going to be some clapback from the East, but we talk about making the graven images and praying to the graven images. So there is disagreement with that, and just for the record, within our walk, we don't do that, and we abstain from vilifying it because we abstain from condemning, we abstain from not condemning, and we leave that for further conversation when people communicate a certain honesty about what's going on. Then we're willing to have that conversation because we recognize that it's difficult to reconcile that differentiation. So, but we also recognize that it seems that very few people are willing to have an honest conversation about that. So until people are ready to have an honest conversation about it, we just say, yo, let's settle some priority issues first, and then let's talk about that. So, so the fifth thing is the clapback. From the East, and the clapback is a little bit of a strong vernacular, but it's this, where kinfolk in India may be ostracized or admonished, let's say admonished, for making a graven image of a cow and bowing down to a cow as a deity, and it's essentially an angel, but as an angel. So that might be the West's response to the Eastern practice, and it's not everybody who does that, but that might be the response. Now, at the same time, the East can look at the West and admonish how the West kills the cow, makes sacrifices, kills the animals, and may not bow down to the graven image or to the life that is observed on this earth, but at the same time annihilates it, kills it, tortures it, enslaves it, disrespects it, violates it, rapes it, pillages it, in the name, with impunity, like with saying that it's a right, it's a dominion, this is ours. And so just as the West can look at India, or I'll say this, just as the West can look at the East and admonish and vilify the East for bowing and worshiping graven images. The East can look at the West and admonish and vilify the West for claiming ownership and dominion, um, and superiority over the entities, the holy beings of this earth. So, in short, it's like the East has the propensity of bowing and be admonished, and in the West, there's the propensity of killing and enslaving. So they're two different violations of the same thing, and admonishing the other side for doing its own thing accordingly. So that's the fifth joint in this thing. So um, I guess that gets into the sixth thing. I don't know if this is what I was thinking of before. I'd have to stop and rewind to see what I was thinking about at the moment. But the sixth thing is that, particularly from the West, in terms of proselytizing, there's what we see, what we observe historically is a very quick conclusion, reaching a very quick conclusion of identifying communities as being heathenistic, of being paganistic, as a pretense for conquering and killing and taking, and enslaving the women, taking all the riches, killing the men. These are heathens. Look at this. They have to be destroyed. Now let's take everything that they have, without doing the due investigation. So that is one of the concerns, and there's a similar concern again on the flip side from the East towards the West, but at the moment, rather than searching for that at the moment, there is appropriate balance with that, but it goes towards basically inviting people or supporting people within people's own delusions, and gaining benefit from that. To be honest, I think where much of the I won't say the fallacy, but the vulnerability of criticism towards the East is actually in the caste system and the rigidity therein, and itself being a microcosm of life, and that becomes further evident when it has to deal with things outside of itself, like it does when dealing with European colonialism. This whole notion of valuing the lighter skinned phenotype, and then a lighter skinned Aryan race arrives, and then there's further side. And the Aryan has always been part of India, but anyways, this I said the sixth thing I think was the conquering thing. The other element is that recognizing that the whole venture, the whole endeavor of comparative religion, of studies between multitudes of religions is comparatively nascent. There's interaction for a long time, for thousands of years, but in terms of it being a scholarly study and whereby common people have some knowledge about what other communities believe, and additionally, that's comparatively new. Translations were made readily available only within the past 200 years. Max Muller, Rhys David are some of the prominent names in that process. So point is that these scholars who do phenomenal work and very valuable work at the same time are not practitioners of both traditions, and so again are relying upon an outsider's knowledge and eventually in learning something from the inside still, even when being able to translate things, even like if it's somebody coming from Oxford or Cambridge, even then those kinfolk may have a very strong command of the English language and a strong understanding of Judeo-Christian history and beliefs, but at the same time not practitioners of it, still very secular, not necessarily the most believing ardent practitioners of the faith, and thus having a different kind of lens when doing the translations and conveying the spirit of what is being taught from each of the different traditions that's being translated. Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya, Dhammapada, even Tao Te Ching in additionally. So And when we're talking about Dao De Ching, we're talking about James Legge, and other scholars as well. So that's the thing. Just recognize who the translations are, who the translators are, and it's only until recent generations, the past 50 years or so, that the English translations at least of these major works, again, Bhagavad Gita particularly, the Upanishads, Dao De Ching, Ming Tzu, Kong Tzu, Lin Yu, that these translations are made by people who are native speakers and practitioners of Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, respectively. So when we have those translations, then we can provide further reliability, and it's no shade on anybody, but it's just the nature of things. Reliability on those translations, because it's done by people who are not just native speakers of the language but also practitioners. For example, Swami Nikalananda of the Swami Vivekananda lineage, as well as Ramakrishna, providing translations of the Bhagavad Gita. I think also the Upanishads as well, because I think I have that translation. We have that with the Son of Ashram. That's an example. But there are Chinese professors that provide translations of the Tao Te Ching, Lin Yu, particularly. We're still working on Buddhism. There are a number of translations of the Dhammapada because it's increasingly accessible. Fewer translations available concerning the Digha Nikaya, because even within Buddhism, scriptural writings are less prioritized, particularly in the Theravada or the forest monk tradition of Southeast Asia. So anyways, that's some of the consideration. But it seems beneficial to have some type of scriptural reasoning on this topic of monotheism, particularly amongst Christian kinfolk, that Jehovah's Witnesses, and additionally to have some foundation, because again, this is the crux of it. So this might be 8 or 9 at this point. I think 8 is the recognizing of the translators, who's doing the translators. So maybe this is like a 10. Maybe this is a list of 10, and we can find. I don't want to say filler, but anyways. But the point is, here we get to the is that the kicker? Oh yeah, the kicker. And the kicker is this: be careful of making false condemnation, false accusation. And this is what precipitates my conversation with the Jehovah's Witnesses kinfolk in the past week, because polytheism, blasphemy, idol worship is one of the worst charges that a person can make against a Muslim, that a person can make against a Jew, lightweight that a person can make against a Christian. It's in many ways worse than murder, it's worse than rape, it's worse than thievery, robbery, and other types of atrocities. It's worse than all of that. And there are heavy penalties because of that, including within different lineages, death. So when calling somebody a polytheist, that is and not just accusing, but like condemning, like, oh, you're da 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 da. That warrants death. That's a death penalty right there. And when looking, particularly within Torah, I would have to look further into the Sharia, I think, because to be honest, I don't think this is specific. For some reason, there's some general recollection of this being the Quran, but I know it's definitely Torah. And because it's Torah, it's also intrinsically within Christianity, although I don't think it's specifically within any of the teachings that Jesus prescribes necessarily. I think there can be some interpretation for it. But anyways, all that being said, here's what I'm saying. Within Torah, this is the law. When somebody makes an accusation towards somebody else, when somebody is bearing witness towards somebody else about, oh, that person, he stole that bicycle. I saw it happen. He did it. He's guilty. I saw it. Whatever the penalty is for the theft of that bicycle, if it's proven, if it's shown, oh no, it wasn't him. He was all the way in China that day. It couldn't have been him. He has 20 witnesses. and here's his ticket, and here's his what he was doing. He wasn't even here for the past 3 years. What are you talking about? It wasn't him. Whoa. The witness was lying. He was trying to get the other person in trouble. The penalty for that false witness is the exact same penalty that the thief would have received. So when somebody is making a false accusation of murder that warrants the death penalty, and the accused was actually innocent, didn't do it, and it's shown, the person who bore false witness saying, "Oh, I saw him," they're the ones that receive the death penalty. So again, I'm a piece of shit. Don't worry about me. I walk with God. But when making false accusation, when people are rolling with those laws and with that awareness, with that knowledge, that's the consequence. So for people's own benefit, people need to be knowledgeable about what people are saying and deciding. And so it's not just a matter of, like, again, that advantageous, oh, we see them making this, we see them doing that, annihilation, the whole lot. Let's be careful about that. So that's the purpose of this joint. Having that knowledge, sharing that knowledge, and if kinfolk are interested in like receiving the passages from the Quran that talks about monotheism, that talks about the distinction concerning the Trinity as distinct from Christianity, the affirmation of the God of Abraham, the God of Jesus, the God of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abraham Avinu, we can do that by the grace of the Most High. People want to see the affirmations concerning the monotheism within Hinduism, as I mentioned, within Bhagavad Gita, and additionally, and where it says about the prescription about what to deal with people who bow to some form or some portion of the ultimate reality. We can talk about that. Oh, the other thing also is this. This might be the 10th one in the middle someplace, but one way to look at it is how Jesus talks exactly, because I mentioned before that in the Bhagavad Gita, it says the guidance is when seeing people who are doing these things, bowing to statues, praying to some portion of the ultimate reality of God, rather than admonishing them, just recognize they're worshiping a microcosm, they're worshiping a part of it. They're enveloped in an illusion, a delusion, and that might sound condescending, but that's what is taught. So again, the guidance is just keep a distance from them. Don't hate them. Offer them some guidance. Don't try to like enslave them or take advantage of them, or share what you can, and keep a distance from being influenced by that delusion. Be detached from falsity. So that is what the Bhagavad Gita prescribes. Now, what we can see is that that's exactly the same methodology that Jesus talks about when Jesus is talking about chastity and celibacy, and a number of other doctrines that Jesus teaches. When his disciples ask him about marriage, and this is a number of times in the Gospels, Jesus talks about for those who have ears to hear. So Jesus says that about men marrying multiple women, about admonishment of divorce, about the practice of divorce being essentially adultery, and at one point in having those conversations about marriage, his disciples say, well, then it's better if people don't get married at all. And Jesus talks about saying, well, for he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Their eunuchs have been eunuchs for the sake of others, being enslaved by others, and they're eunuchs who are make themselves eunuchs for the sake of God. So basically, Jesus teaches a lifestyle of monasticism, of celibacy, which is evidenced within the subsequent life work of beautiful, beautiful day, beautiful, beautiful smile, peace and blessings. So, um, Jesus teaches a doctrine, a lifestyle of celibacy, and it's evidenced within the practice of Catholicism. But at the same time, Jesus says it's not for everybody. Not everybody's ready for that. So for those who have ears to hear, for those who get this, here it is. Here's the truth, and ready, step up your game. For those who don't have ears to hear, they're not ready for it. And Jesus says that in a number of different parables and a number of different facets of the teaching. So, and the Bhagavad Gita says the exact same thing. It's at the very beginning in the second Yogahe, or the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna and talks about saying, like, here's Samkhya, here's like the way of being. It's like detachment from everything, having the universal I, being indifferent to pain and pleasure, and living away from this earthly experience. It's very difficult. It's not for everybody. Ain't anybody ready for that. So now that you've been introduced to that, here's the other teaching. And the other teaching is to be compassionate and to work for service and to work for the improvement of well-being and healing, and additionally altruistically. That is increasingly accessible. So again, it's the same thing for those who have ears to hear. You want to go a higher path? Won't let go of everything. And what up? That's the higher path. If you ain't ready for that, you don't have ears to hear that, you can keep walking this earth in a righteous way, in a balanced way. And here's some of the prescription for doing that. So, anyways, that's what we got to share. Another hour on this joint and things to do. So, yay. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, known by many different names and beyond all names, the author and creator of all being and all life and all grace. Blessed love and peace.